Hi guys, and today I'm going to be starting something new. I'm going to be now moving forward talking about wars that have happened in recent memory and like kind of going over details about battles, backgrounds, all sorts of it. So what a good one to start with today and many other episodes. It's not going to be one episode. I'm going to be talking about the Iraq War. This one's personal to me because my dad fought in the Iraq War. Um, so without further ado, let's just get right into it. Alright, so we're gonna start with the background to the war. The main allegations were the U.S. After the September 11th attacks, President George W. Bush turned to Iraq saying that they had weapons of mass destruction, and the allegations were that Saddam Hussein, the president of Iraq, was attempting to produce weapons of mass destruction, which Saddam had used in places such as Halabja, possessed and made efforts to acquire, practically considering two previous attacks on Baghdad nuclear weapons production facilities by both Iran and Israel, which were alleged to have postponed weapons development progress, and further that had ties to terrorists, specifically Al-Qaeda. The Bush administration's overall relation for the invasion of Iraq was presented in detail by U.S. Secretary of State Colin Powell to the UN on February 5th, 2003. In summary, he stated, "We know that Saddam Hussein is determined to keep his weapons of mass destruction. He's determined to make more. Given Saddam's history of aggression, given what we know of his terrorist associations, and given his determination to exact revenge on those who oppose him, should we take the risk that he will not someday use these weapons at a time and place and in the manner of his choosing at a time when the world is in a much weaker position to respond? The United States will not and cannot run that risk to the American people. Leaving Saddam Hussein in possession of weapons of mass destruction for a few more months or years is not an option, not in post-September 11th world." And now we're going into the objectives of the Iraq War. According to General Tommy Franks, the objectives of the invasion were: first, end the regime of Saddam Hussein; second, to identify, isolate, and eliminate Iraq's weapons of mass destruction; third, to search for, to capture, and to drive out terrorists from the country; fourth, to collect such intelligence as we can relate to terrorist networks; fifth, to collect such intelligence as we can relate to the global network of illicit weapons of mass destruction; sixth, to end sanctions and to immediately deliver humanitarian support to the displaced and to many Iraqi citizens; seventh, to secure Iraq's oil fields and resources which belong to the Iraqi people; and last, to help the Iraqi people create conditions for a transition to a representative self-government. Now we're going into the coalition of the willing. In November of 2002, President George W. Bush visited Europe for a NATO summit, declared that should Iraqi President Saddam Hussein choose not to disarm, the United States will lead a coalition of the willing to disarm him. Thereafter, the Bush administration briefly used the term coalition of the willing to refer to the countries who supported, militarily or verbally, the military action in Iraq and subsequent military presence in post-invasion Iraq since 2003. That'll be the next thing I'm covering after the invasion. The original list prepared in March 2003 included 49 members. Of those 49, only 6 besides the United States contributed troops to the invasion force. Those include the United Kingdom, Australia, Poland, Spain, Portugal, and Denmark. And 33 provided some number of troops to support the occupation after the invasion was complete. Now we're going into the invasion force. In total, 466,985 U.S. personnel were deployed for the invasion of Iraq. The ground troops counted as 336,000, U.S. Army leading with 233,000, the Air Force was 64,000, and the Navy was 63,000 personnel total. These also include 50,000 British troops, 2,000 Australians, and 194 special forces from Poland. Now we're turning to the Iraqi forces. The number of personnel in the Iraqi military before the war was uncertain, but it was believed to have been poorly equipped. The international Institute for Strategic Studies estimated the Iraqi armed forces to number 389,000, 350,000 Iraqi Army, 2,000 Navy, 20,000 Air Force, and 17,000 Air Defense. The paramilitary Fedina Saddam 44,000, Republican Guard 80,000, and Reserve 650,000. Now we're moving into the invasion of Iraq. On March 20th, 2003, at approximately 4:34 local time, explosions were heard in Baghdad. Special Operations Commandos from the CIA Special Activities Division from the Northern Iraqi Legion element infiltrated through Iraq and called in the early airstrikes. At 3:16 or 10:16 p.m. Eastern Time, George W. Bush announced that he had ordered an attack against selected targets of military importance in Iraq. When this word was given, the troops on standby crossed the border into Iraq. The United States launched this invasion as an effective operation continuing of the First Gulf War. The main objectives were to destroy the Iraqi army, cripple their ability to fight, and dismantle the Iraqi government. However, the Iraqis immediately adapted and began using unconventional tactics. Already on March 22nd, just 2 days into the war, the Americans encountered the first taste of the insurgency tactics that would later define the war. Alright, I think that's where I will end it for today. Tomorrow, or whenever I upload the second part, I'll go into more details of the battles during the Iraq War, and then hopefully that's like maybe 1 or 2 episodes, and then after that, hopefully the end of the invasion of Iraq. And then we'll go into more about the Iraq, the middle, and then the end of the Iraq War. Alright, I hope you guys like this video, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.